Hello, Michael in Austin, Texas. Good to hear from you. I think I might have missed your comment a minute ago. I spent 10 years of my adult life in Texas. A couple of those years in San Saba, which used to be 3 hours west of Austin. Now, because of upgraded roads, is only 2 hours west of Austin. I discovered that back in January because my wife and I did a wedding in Austin and then drove down and visited old friends in San Saba. Well, hello, friends. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Dan Nelson, and I'm still working on illustrations for a book. I believe there are going to be 47 illustrations, and I have about 42 of them finished. I'll run just to show you very quickly the kind of stuff. It's this kind of pen on, hello Harrison, good to have you back, on graphics marker paper. By the way, a number of these, when I get them into Photoshop, in fact, as I'm looking at these, as I'm showing them to you, in Photoshop I make changes. For instance, in this one I made this boy's head slightly smaller, and this one I made this man's arm slightly longer. Hello, Harrison in Ottawa. Good. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, and like Canada quite a bit. So I get in Photoshop, I get a final edit of all these, which I don't do on every one, but on several I edit. So anyway, these are the illustrations. I won't show them all to you, just to kind of get you back up to speed. Again, I believe the total number. Harrison, glad you were with me last time. And I thought today, I've talked about this job quite a bit because it's been going on for what, a month, maybe more than a month now, and I am in the process of nearly all the sketching is done, and most of the drawing is done. So all I have left is the cross hatching. Now, I've mentioned this before because a few of my followers have said, man, don't you get bored? And let me be real honest. What else would I be? And say, yes. Hi, Michael. Commentary on Austin. I love it. It was very fun to be back in Texas. It had been, my goodness, I think 20 years since we had been back. And it's interesting to get impressions of places, fresh impressions after being gone a long time. So it's all California-ized, is it now? That's a good analysis. So I'm doing the cross hatching, which in this case my client asked. He didn't want, I'll zoom back in here, he didn't want the checkerboard tic-tac-toe look. Thank you, Alk. Thank you for asking that question. How can I show you this? Yes, I can't show you the camera because I'm using it. I can show it to you someday. No, I can't show it to you. Sorry. Yes, it's called, I'll tell you, it's called Mevo. It's a camera called MEVO. And let me write that down on a piece of scrap paper somewhere. Mevo. And it's a small camera. Again, I can't pick it up and show it to you because you're on it. Controlled by my phone. And as you can see, it allows me to scan. I'm just doing this at random. There I am. And if I wanted you to see over here, it's a pretty neat system when it works. It's had some challenges. I have had some challenges with it, but generally speaking, it's better than just broadcasting from just my phone. Okay, back to the subject at hand, cross-hatching. And a couple of you have said, man, don't you get bored? And the answer is yes, absolutely I do. I used to do a lot of cross-hatching back in the day when I was a full-time illustrator. So right now I'm a full-time painter, fine artist, and a part-time illustrator. And I enjoy the variety very much. It is true, I'm a little bit irritated that I haven't been able to do as many disposition or silly attitude to take, because I'm being paid for these illustrations, and getting paid is something that a fine artist painter does not always do. But someone asked, do you get bored? And the answer is I do. So all through the years, 25 years ago, do you remember books on tape? Do you remember tapes? I used to listen to books on tape, and now I listen to podcasts and YouTube videos. I don't watch the video, of course. I just listen to it. So I don't watch movies. I listen to history, philosophy, theology, science, and literature are my primary avocations. I don't listen to music very much because there's not enough energy. I need something more challenging or stimulating. And of course, when I'm broadcasting, talking to you guys, then you feel, to some degree, you feel the same need. So there you go. When you're doing something really boring, multitask. Listen to something you enjoy. I want to talk for a minute, though, about expanding on that subject just for a few minutes, about the whole notion of tedium. That is to say, monotony, tediousness. Okay, there's not really a word. The tediousness is not really a word. It changes over to tedium. Boring, doing something repeatedly for hours on end. I have come to be a huge believer in tedium. In fact, just yesterday afternoon, some of the podcasts someday. Oh, like the ones that I watch, the ones that I enjoy. Oh, the ones that I listen to. Yes, now that's ironic. I don't listen to that many artistic podcasts. I watch a lot of artistic videos, YouTube videos, and I mention them quite often. If you can write this down, one is a young man named Proko, Proko. That's on YouTube. Another one is Mark Carder, C-A-R-D, D as in dog, Carder. Mark Carder is very generous with his excellent information. Now, Mark Carder makes me laugh because I think if I knew him, we would be friends. But he and I are so different in the way we approach our art. If you want to, watching Mark Carder and Dan Nelson, you'd probably get a pretty balanced art education because we disagree on almost everything. I say that, partly tongue-in-cheek, and but I enjoy his information. He's very helpful, very, very, very helpful. Mark Carder, Proko, there are a number of people that I wish would do more online. Richard Schmid has a few videos, SCHMID. He has a fantastic book out called Alla Prima Painting, Everything I Know About Alla Prima Painting by Richard Schmid. Very expensive book. I think it might be out of print, therefore very expensive. Anyway, but in praise of tediousness, tedium. So I was starting to say, I was yesterday afternoon. Yes, I think Mark does live in Austin. I know he lives in Texas, and Michael, I believe he is in Austin. Rats, I should have tried to drop in on him while I was there in January. Didn't even think about it. So yesterday afternoon, I was downstairs and practicing my trumpet, which is I play a number of musical instruments, but trumpet is the only one that I have, well, no, guitar, I guess. I have some, I mean, mostly, by the way, classical guitar, not rock and roll. So a very particular kind of guitar and trumpet. And virtuosity is where I have some degree of virtuosity. And so my grandchildren, as you know, are living with us these days, and their parents. We're having a great time. I enjoy it very much. I get the chance to mess up, quote unquote, another generation of children, which excites me very, very much. And my 7-year-old grandson was sitting there next to me while I was practicing. Sometimes I will, hey, Harrison, I must have missed a question. No, I must try it again. I must have missed something about listing anyway, forgive me. I must have missed something, Harrison, there. I thought I was answering all the questions that came up. So I don't see every one that pops up. Sorry about that. Try it again. Ask me again. Anyway, talking to my grandson as I was sitting there. Now, please understand, when I say practicing trumpet, that is precisely what I mean. I don't mean playing. Non-musicians, some of you don't understand what real musicians go through. And yes, I'm being a bit of a snob here. But just because you play a musical instrument doesn't necessarily mean you're a real musician. You are, in my book, you're a real musician if you practice. And practice does not mean play. There are a lot of people that play the guitar. Joe Satriani, to use one silly example, extreme example, practices. Okay, the difference between Eric Johnson, Joe Satriani, and a number of other virtuosic players is they practice, everybody else plays. Okay, so I'm practicing trumpet, and it goes kind of like this. Now, when the minor, and now in the blues, I can't sing it, you know what I mean? Okay, now we'll half step higher. Do you hear the monotony? Do you hear the tedium? So they were sitting beside me, not because they love to hear me practice, but because sometimes when I'm practicing the trumpet, I'll turn on something on the TV and have the volume turned all the way down and have captions turned on so I can sort of read what's happening on the TV screen while I'm practicing. There's a bit of a theme developing here, isn't there, about this multitasking? Anyway, so I took the opportunity to talk to my grandson and say, do you know why I'm good at trumpet? He dutifully said, no. Why? And I said, because I practice. Do you know why most people are not good at musical instruments? Because they don't practice? I said, bingo. Exactly. Because they don't practice. They might play, but they don't practice. So I've just demonstrated for you. You know, once I'm finished going, then I'm back to so all you musicians know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you who are not musicians are going, I don't get it. Does it mean playing the same thing over and over? Yeah, basically. It means playing the same thing. It means playing exercises over and over. How much time do I spend practicing songs? The answer is precisely 0. That has to do partly with what am I doing with my playing these days? All of my playing is impromptu. I'm not in a stage of life where I'm sitting down and playing music that's been written. If I were, then I would practice the songs that I have to play for a concert. But that's not the kind of music I do. Everything I do these days is extemporaneous. So I play in all 12 keys. Again, I've lost you non-musicians, I know. But I play, the music comes in 12 different keys. I play in all 12 keys, major, minor, and blues. And every kind of exercise, just about that you can imagine, every kind of workout. So, and I'm saying all this not for those of you who understand it, but for those. Let's go back to art for a minute. Want to be good at cross-hatching? Crosshatch. But cross-hatching is boring. Granted. I'm convinced that tedium, the ability to discipline oneself to do the boring, Paul, I'm going to interrupt myself and answer your question. Paul just asked a question. Okay, am I good because I practice, or am I a natural? Can anyone who is good, can anyone who practices become good? Paul, that is a great question. That's one place I talked a few minutes ago about Mark Carter. That is one place where he and I disagree emphatically. He says anybody can learn to do art. And then he proceeds to show the spectacular work of his students. He'll say, this is Bob's painting. This is Bob's first painting, and Bob's first painting is spectacular. He said, this is Mary Jo's very first painting, and Mary Jo's first painting is spectacular. And you're left dumbfounded as to how these beginner students can produce such amazing work, until Mark Carter shows you how. How they do such spectacular work. And the answer is by painting the way he does, which is he has a very, very analytical, precise method of measuring every stinking thing. Measuring. Does it work? Absolutely. Is he a good painter? Absolutely. Has he gotten fairly rich and famous doing it? Absolutely. Do I recommend it? Absolutely not. No, it's good for some people. But the reason his students are so good is because he has them measure, and it's a step-by-step, step 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Okay, so Paul, back to your question. Can anybody do it? And I have been very uncertain about this for many years. I kind of go, no, no. And I'm coming down more on the side of no, which doesn't make me a very popular art teacher, because all art teachers should be saying, no, anybody can learn to do this. Okay, here's why I don't say that. Here's why I don't believe that anymore. Is because I look at my own self and say, for instance, do I have the intelligence to do the arithmetic necessary to be a tax accountant? I do. Do I have the intelligence necessary to read the English language put out by the United States government, the documents that tell tax law? The answer is, I do. I'm a good reader, and I speak English fairly well. Do I have the intelligence to know how to market myself and get clients as, hello yourself, Aesthetist, love it, what a great name. Are you with me yet? The point is, am I smart enough to become an accountant? The answer is, in one sense, yes. And Paul, thanks for asking that again. I'm answering that question. Okay, so am I smart enough to do arithmetic? Yep. Am I smart enough to read the tax law that's sent out by the IRS? The answer is yes. Here's the key question. Do I have the personality style, the proclivities, the inclination, the giftings necessary to be a tax accountant? The answer is an absolute and emphatic no way. I often joke, and it is just a joke, but I think one that most people can understand. I say, if I die and go to hell, I will find myself. Hell for me would be, congratulations, Mr. Nelson, you are now in hell. You are an accountant. Oh no! Okay, so I'm not making any serious theological statement by this statement. I'm just being funny using our shared common cultural icons to describe. No, I do not have the personality, the proclivity, I'm missing, what's the word I'm looking for? The inclination to do any of those things. So if I don't have the inclination, that I could never become an accountant. Well, what do you mean? If somebody put me in prison and locked me in a cell, could I become an accountant? Then they put a gun to my head, could I become an accountant? Yes, I could. If the option is getting a bullet through the brain, yes, I could become an accountant. But that's just about what it would take. Are you with me? So no, because I know that I don't have the disposition to be a good accountant, I understand that everybody is different. Some people do not have the personality style to become an artist. Do they have the intelligence? Yep. Could they do like what Mark Carter tells them to do? Yep. But are most people going to do it? No. So no, I think every person should follow their heart, so to speak. Now, that sounds like a bunch of New Age gobbledygook. I don't mean that way. Everybody should follow their natural inclinations. And if you have an inclination toward being an artist, then yes, you can become a good artist. If you don't, then yeah, you're smart enough. You could learn it. But it'll never come naturally. It'll never be as much fun. It'll be torturous, kind of like me trying to become an accountant. So that's my answer to that question. Back to the issue of tedium. Let me tell you kind of a funny story, and I'm dating myself with this story, but that's all right. I'd never make a secret. I'm 64 years old. I was in grad school in the late 70s, and I had the pleasure of living with 4 or 5 other young men in a house. And it was a very special time. This is in Fort Worth, Texas. We had a good friendship, rent a house together. And we did this arrangement for, hello, esthetist from Russia. Wow. We had this arrangement for several years where we lived together for, I think, a total of 3 years, most of us. Some went and new people came into our house. But Paul, love it. Hey, Paul's going to become an accountant, he says. Good call. Anyway, there was a short season while we were living together in the late 70s in a house in Fort Worth, Texas, where several of us would get home from a long day of school in the middle of the afternoon. And in those days, boy, this is going way back to network television, broadcast television, which you young people can't even imagine. We only had 3 channels in those days. I'm exaggerating slightly, but CBS, NBC, and ABC. So everybody watched the same channels, sort of the same programs. And in the afternoon, the classic television show Happy Days would come on with Ron Howard, remember the Fonz, Ricky Cunningham, was Ron Howard. And for some reason, we just got into the habit of, when we got home in the afternoon, we would sit down for 30 minutes and watch Happy Days together. Okay, that's all the setup. You got it? Friends, fellow students, watching Happy Days. And there was one particular episode of Happy Days where Richie Cunningham, Ron Howard's character, got up at the local drive-in, what was the name of that hamburger joint? Albert's, I forget what it was. Anyway, they were having live music at this restaurant, and Ron Howard's character got up. Hey, Will, thanks for talking to each other, you guys. Ron Howard's character got up in the middle of this episode of Happy Days and played a ripping, fantastic solo on a tenor saxophone. And as soon as that happened, it sent me into what? I know this is hard to believe, but I went, man, that is crazy. There's no way that Ron Howard, that Richie Cunningham could play the saxophone that way. There's no way that he could play the saxophone that well. And here's why. Here's what all musicians know. And anybody who's achieved a skill, an excellent skill, knows this. And I said, because if Ron Howard and Richie Cunningham could play the saxophone that well, then the whole Happy Days storyline would have to be modified greatly, because a huge part of the Happy Days culture storyline would have to be this: Richie Cunningham, while all his friends are out gallivanting around, making mischief, having fun, wasting time, playing, chasing girls, Richie can't do any of that because he's got to stay home and practice. Okay, every musician I'm talking to right now says that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And the funny part was, so this is what I said, is we're all sitting there watching this TV show. I said, that's ridiculous. If he could play the sax like that, he'd have to spend hours every day practicing, and they would have to incorporate that. That would have to be part of the storyline. Now, it didn't make me dislike Happy Days. It was still fun, and it was funny, but it was humor. It was comedy, frankly, that he could get up and play the saxophone that well. And here's the kicker. One of my roommates, who was 26 years old at the time, Glaubson Azevedo. Yeah, I hope I remember your question. I'm going to come back to it in a minute. So one of my roommates, after I made this outburst and gesticulated dramatically and said, that's ridiculous, Richie Cunningham can't play the saxophone that way. And at the time, remember, I was a serious trumpet player. And I practiced virtually every day. When I came home from school, besides after watching Happy Days, or sometime before I went to bed, I would go up into my bedroom in this house with 4 other guys. I would stick my head in a closet, literally stick my trumpet in a closet, and practice. You got the idea? Okay, got it? And one of my roommates, after I made this statement, he looked at me and said, Dan, until I lived with you, I had no idea that that's what musicians had to do. So it showed to me, because I'd grown up in a crazy family of serious musicians. And I thought that everybody understood. All good musicians practice hard. And he told me that, no, many people do not understand that. I was flabbergasted. Now, I'm not flabbergasted anymore, because decades later I've come to discover that he was exactly right. A lot of people do not know that skill comes through tedium. That's the word I want to make. Are you with me? I'm going to get back to art in a minute, but I'm using music as just sort of a, so us artists can talk about some other subject and take the tension out of the air. Skill comes through tedium. And this, especially in art, music, athletics, dance, any personal skill. Now, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Any personal skill. Well, what about, do all, bank presidents, do they exhibit some kind of leadership skill? The answer is yes. And I am not sure that leadership personality skill comes through tedium, which, by the way, that's an entire another subject I'm going to leave for another day. But I want to focus on this issue of tedium for a minute. Over the years, I've had many people, young people. How do I know they're young? Because only a young person would say such a stupid thing. Okay, that's terrible. But let me tell you what many people have said to some of my videos, especially my videos that have tedium in them. And they say, oh man, I would never do that. That's too much work. You should use a computer. You shouldn't do work. You shouldn't do that much work. It's not worth it. Stuff like that. Are you with me? And I can tell that it's a person. This is hatching. That's right. Right now, this is hatching not cross-hatching. Exactly. I'll get to the cross part sort of later, except that this client asked that I not do the typical cross-hatching like this, but that I make my hatching go like this so that we avoid the checkerboard or the tic-tac-toe look. Every time a young person makes a comment on one of my videos saying, "Oh man, I could never do that much work, blah, blah, blah," I hear money falling into my bank account because it is precisely because I am, for some reason, the kind of person who is willing to endure tedium. That's the word. Because I am willing to endure tedium. That's why I will make a lot of money as an artist, and the person making that statement will not. Now, what is tragic is that the person who won't do this kind of tedium probably won't do any other kind of tedium either. Several years ago, I had a nephew who was the hottest, a young man, nephew, who was the hottest three-point basketball shooter in the state of Virginia. I think it's fair to say that. Okay? Lot of athletic skill. How did he get that way? No mystery. The answer is tedium. We would visit this is my wife's brother, his wife, and their children. Delightful family. And we would visit them when this young man was 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And I remember very well, before he could go to bed at night, his parents made him. And some people would say, well, that's terrible to make a child do that. Well, I don't know. They would make him, and he wanted to, but every child that wants to do something good needs encouragement. Every child that wants to play the piano needs encouragement practicing the piano. They would make my nephew go out to the garage, and for 15 minutes, he had to practice dribbling with both hands against the wall of the garage. Are you with me? So, I don't know. There's something. Somebody should write a book about the glory of tedium, because it is in fact tedium that gives us skill. Good calligraphy. Who is the better calligrapher? And the answer in this conversation is easy. The one who is willing to endure the most tedium. Again, I'm assuming you know what calligraphy is. It's beautiful hand lettering, right? Now, sure, it's because somebody has a natural proclivity, a natural disposition toward that kind of activity, of course. But the fact is, many people have the interest, the disposition. What they don't have is the character that allows them to press through. Look at how many... Oh, that is good to hear. Away for the win. Thank you so much. That is a precious comment. I appreciate it. How many minutes you've been watching me? How many minutes have I been going now? 30 minutes? Look at, all I've done is, no cross-hatching, just hatching there and there. That is ridiculously boring. Of course, it helps because you're keeping me company, you see. So I have ways. In a little while, this afternoon, this evening, I'm going to go downstairs and practice my trumpet and my guitar, and so on. So again, the point I want to make, and again, I hope some young people will listen to this, because skill, the practice is what you do to get better at something, Will. Tedium is the boring, like everybody's willing to practice for 10 minutes. Does that make sense? Everybody's, I'm saying, exaggerating here, everybody's willing to practice for 10 or 20 minutes. And you can get some skill developed on 20 minutes. Very few people have the capacity to press through the extreme boredom, tedium, to practice for 5 hours. When you go on the internet, when you go on YouTube and you could just Google, phenomenal young, what you see these children that play guitar or play any instrument whatsoever, and then you hang out with a normal child. It's real easy, real quickly to see the difference between for some reason, I think the little Korean kid who's a genius on the piano. Why is he a genius? Because for some reason his head is messed up. I say that in jest. For some reason, this 4-year-old kid has the capacity to endure, to press through tedium, to sit at the keyboard and practice, where a normal 4-year-old can't sit there for more than 90 seconds in practice. Now that doesn't mean the regular 4-year-old can't get pretty good. He can develop this capacity later. Anyway, but I'm going to change the subject here shortly. In praise of tedium, that's the essay that I'm writing in my head. In praise, that should be a sidebar in my book, shouldn't it? In praise of tedium. This is very tedious. Just drawing this bear is a bear. It's boring. Are you with me? But this is the reason I get paid by people a decent amount. I won't say how much, but it'll pay for several mortgages. Right? Okay, I'll get that. I'll go that far. This job of doing 40 some illustrations will pay for several months of mortgages. Okay? Why are they paying me so much? Because I'm good. Why am I good? Because I was willing. Over the decades, I've been willing to endure the pain of tediousness. Okay, now, there's been a couple other questions that have flown by while I've been ranting and raving on that subject. Let me see if I can remember now what they were. Oh, it was a good one. And it's gonna have to come back to me here in a minute. By the way, if you weren't here, I for some of this stuff, like how do I know what a bear looks like? I Googled. I mean, isn't Google a wonderful tool? I Googled. This is not a grizzly bear; it's a black bear. And I Googled. I Googled black bear, mouth open, black bear paw, and black bear standing up. By the way, this is kind of interesting. So what I learned is that black bears, how long have I been an artist? Good question. Black bears don't typically stand up to attack people. They attack people on all fours. They charge this way. If a black bear is standing up, it's actually so he can see something, because he wants to see something that's far away. This is what I learned looking up this. So that my drawing is wrong, but this is what people think black bears do. We think they stand up. So I'm portraying the traditional. Okay, my dad was a very good hobby painter. It was not his profession by any means, but he was a pretty good artist. And so by the time I went off to kindergarten, I liked my daddy, and I thought I was, but when I was 5 years old, I thought I was. So that's the answer to that question. Yeah, Julian, you're exactly correct. I do think normal checkerboard cross-hatching, that's what I would call traditional cross-hatching, is better than scribble cross-hatching, which is what I've called this style. Let me try to demonstrate here. Am I zoomed in as far as I can get? Almost. Okay, so let's look at, again, everything I've done so far. What I'm doing right now is scribble hatching, by the way, which means I make my pen right in both directions, this way and this way, this way, this way, this way. That's scribble hatching. Regular cross hatching is the pen only makes a mark going in one direction that way. Get it? But here I am. So I want this young man's pant leg to have shade around it. Traditional cross-hatching would mean I would come back and go across the grain. But this particular client requested, for some reason, he doesn't like the checkerboard look of traditional cross-hatching. And you can say, well, does he have the right to make such a demand of you? My answer is, of course he does. He's the one who's paying me. But aren't you offended that he's messing with your technique? My answer is, yes, if I'm offended, I don't have to take the job. But he's offering me good money to do illustrations in a style that he likes. If I'm offended by that, first of all, I'm going to be a starving artist if I wear my feelings on the sleeve. So no, of course I'm not offended. Not in the least. He's paying the bills. He has the right to ask such a thing. If I think he's over the line, over the limit of asking me something that is ridiculous, then I have the right to refuse to take the job. Okay, but anyway, so the difference here is instead of doing, let me draw it real big here. Let me find a piece of scrap paper. Let me show you what I'm doing. So here's traditional cross-hatching, right? This is magnified several times. Then the second layer goes like this. That's traditional. Third layer goes something like this. And the fourth layer something like this. And then after that, who knows? Then you get into scribble hatching, okay? So what I'm doing for this client is if my first layer goes like this, I have several options. I can make my second layer just go like that and hope that it gets darker. Another option that it gets that enough lines hit in between the first lines to show up as darker. Another option is I can make it go at a slight angle like this, so I don't get checkerboard, I get diamond shapes. But then if I come back and make it go again like this, most of the diamond shapes get eliminated, and we still get, from light to dark. Get it? And of course, I'm also using, in this case, normal cross-hatching. Your pen only makes a mark going in one direction, right? One of the things I call this scribble hatching. It's a lot faster, not quite as neat, kind of messier, but it has a certain charm about it that this doesn't have, right? So this is what I'm doing. So these two things is what I'm doing for this particular job. I am not doing traditional cross-hatching. So that's how I'm achieving a graduation, a gradation of color. That's what I just did on this young man's pant leg. So it's lighter on the top and darker on the bottom by employing a different kind of cross-hatching. Now the irritating thing about these pens is that they stop working after a while. I have to give them a rest, and I'm wearing down the points from doing so many hours of cross-hatching. Cross-hatching, scribble hatching, as the case may be. Good question, Bashir. What about mixing cross-hatching and stippling? I've seen it done a little bit, and that's a very good question. I don't think the two of them go together very well. Now, if you look at for instance, my one video that has really gone viral, which is called, I'm assuming most of you have seen it, because that's how most of you found me in the first place. I've got 2.6 million views on it. It's called Cross-Hatching Masters Edition. There's a long story as to why it's called that. You will see that in that technique, I use dots. In fact, here, I'm going to give you hang on just a second. I'm going to give you a bit of a earthquake ride for just a minute. Wait, bear with me for a minute. Let me get you down here where you can see this up close. And I need to take a minute and see if this is going to be out of focus. Again, I know I'm shaking you all over the place. Sorry about that. Okay, but that gets us in close enough. let me do, this is what I do, and this is answer, is it okay to combine stippling and cross-hatching? And generally I say no, except unless you mean, is it okay to put like a dot at the end of the line? So do you see it gives you a sense that it fades out right there? And of course I believe that that is okay. I don't call that a combination of stippling and cross-hatching, but if that's what you meant, then yes, absolutely, I think it's okay to combine the two. But generally speaking, strictly speaking, no, I don't think those two techniques mix real well. I would love, perhaps, no doubt there's somebody out there that does mix them very well, and I'm just not aware of it. So I'm very quick to admit that there may be somebody who's doing that and executing it very well. I think generally, like if I were an art teacher and I had a number of students, generally speaking, I would steer students away from trying to mix different techniques unless they can find out a way to really make it work visually. Okay, there, does that help some? But you see, I do incorporate dots there. Let me put you back on your perch. And as I continue to draw. But I've said pretty much all I need to say today. In fact, I've said a whole bunch more. I've said way more than I need to say. Bless you. Some of you are saying, man, when's this guy going to shut up? Well, now. I'm going to shut up now. So this is Justin. He's just been attacked by a bear. He's supposed to have blood running down the side of his face. Again, it's not my job to write the story. It's just my job to illustrate it. And it is, yes, it is quite fun. As you know, if you followed me in this little adventure of illustrating this book, I actually enjoy the adventure of illustrating a book. I have illustrated very few books in my life. No, do not send and ask me to illustrate a book unless you're a professional writer. I'm going to be really mean, nasty, and snobby for a second, so brace yourself. Along with all my other talents, I fancy myself a pretty good writer. Am I published? Yes. No, I'm not going to tell you where. It's a long story. Don't want to get into it. I am a published author. Okay, the short story is I'm a ghost writer. And there are books out there with other people's names on them that I wrote. Okay? And how did I get to be good at that? Simply by reading a lot and writing a lot. And has made me a fairly decent writer. So when most of the time throughout my life, when here's the arrogant part, when I've been asked to illustrate a book, I refuse to illustrate a book that I could, if I could write it better myself. And I'm a fairly decent writer, so no, I don't want to read. I don't want to write a book that's not worthy of my artistic skill. Does that make sense? Anyway, but I am illustrating this one, and it's a lot of fun. Thank you, Glubson. Thank you, Azevedo. Yes, I did forget what it was. Azevedo is asking, or Glubson, forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. In our society, have we lost the value of beauty? I'm going to change your question slightly. Yes, we have definitely lost the value of beauty, largely because of the aesthetic confusion created by quote-unquote modern art. Modern art, they are not concerned, modern artists are not concerned with beauty for the most part. They are concerned with communication. They are concerned with making socio-political statements. The artists, and if that makes sense, I hope most of you go, oh yeah, that's exactly right. When you go into the modern art section of your local art museum, they're not concerned with beauty. They're concerned with making statements. Therefore, much of the work that they produce is intentionally ugly. Yes, I do have an artist statement. Man, you guys are asking such great questions today. I'm forgetting one before I get to the other. Let me write that down because I'm going to forget. Artist statement. Okay, so the modern art movement infused megatons of ugliness into the art, the public's experience of art. And therefore, most non-artists are quite confused by the art world. They think artists should be creating beauty, and clearly they are not. So they're confused. Therefore, the great majority of the public has lost confidence in its own ability to discern beauty, because they say, well, look what's in the museum. I think it's ugly as heck, but the museum must think it's good because the museum only puts good art. No. What you don't understand is they are not trying to create beauty. They're trying to create ugly on purpose, because that serves their purpose of making socio-political statements. Okay? So yes, our public, by and large, has lost its capacity to appreciate beauty because we're confused by what's going on in the modern art establishment. I think we're in a graver danger, going back to the question, I think we're in a more grave danger of people losing the capacity to create excellence in every field of human endeavor. We have a very, very, very few people, like professional athletes, professional musicians, and a few professional artists who create extraordinary works, technology, athletic, and so forth. Meanwhile, the great majority of the population is getting, forgive me, I don't mean this literally, but sluggish, fat and lazy, letting a handful of rare human beings create extraordinary works. Let me talk to young people. I don't know if any young people are going to listen to me, but if I had just one word of advice, and by the way, I've had this same word of advice since I was about 16 years old. The advice is quit watching TV. Now, I watch TV, but I don't watch nearly as much as the average American. And now I would have to add to that, quit watching TV, quit playing on your phone, and quit playing video games. Play just enough video games and just enough TV to bring into your life a degree of recreation. But all the rest of your life, the great majority of your time, day in, day out, year in, year out, decade in, decade out, the great majority of your time should be spent working on excellence. And I do happen to believe that that is not what is happening in most people. They are not spending the majority of their time pursuing excellence. They're spending the majority of their time wasting it doing things. Now, a young man will say to me, no, I'm pursuing excellence in video games. And already my lecture is getting too complex and too involved to answer that question. But no, video games do not count. Here's why. You do not want to spend your time, you don't want to waste your time doing things. Michael, I love it. Oh my goodness, no. You guys are asking such good questions today. I'm not going to have time to answer them. I'll keep going. Okay. I love it, Michael. That is just classic. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. No, I don't think we should have blah, blah, blah statements. And I don't have one. Anyway, it's back to the kid who says, the young man in particular who says, I'm not wasting my time. I am developing skill. I'm becoming real good at video games. When I grow up and go to college, I want to major in computer programming, and I want to become a professional video game producer. Oh, my goodness. Listen to me, young person. I don't know if there's any young person ever going to hear this, but I hope one will. No, do not do that. The chances of you making a living by producing video games is about the same as the poor little kid in the ghetto making it rich by playing in the NBA. Does it happen? Yep. 1 in 5 million. And no, you are not going to be 1 in 5 million who's good enough to create video games. So no, don't do it. By the way, we're a related subject. Some of you artists, young men artists, think you're going to make a living by drawing anime. Do not do it. Run for your lives. Do not try to make a living creating anime. Again, 1 out of a million can make a living doing that. The other 499,999 artists will be starving artists. Okay? You can be a good artist, but do not be an anime artist. Why? The field is ruined by too many people with too much talent doing it for too little money. In other words, this is where I started out this afternoon, with the people who are willing to pay the price of tedium, monotonous, boring, who are willing to practice, they will get good. But even so, you don't want to try to get good at things that too many people are trying to get good at. Oh, man. Okay, now artist statement. Do I have an artist statement? Oh, my goodness. Well, sort of. In a way, no. Not the kind you're talking about. In fact, in my book about the breakable laws of painting, I mock the heck out of artist statements, the kind that, was it Michael was talking about? No, here's my definition of art. It's not an artist statement, but here's my definition of art. You ready? I'm going to keep drawing now. Here's my definition of art, and this is, I have a pretty strong proclivity for history and philosophy, a little bit of skill in languages, a degree in theology, which is very closely related to philosophy, master's degree that is, and after all, and a bachelor's degree in fine art. Okay, so after all that, and after thinking about it for many years, decades, here's my definition of art. I'm going to give you a definition of art, okay? You ready? Hold your breath. Ready? Art is stuff that's made to look at. Period. Good for you, esthetist. You go, man. There is hope. By the way, I have great respect for Russians of many kinds. You're exactly right. Animators get paid. It's one of those fields where it's just been ruined by too many people, young people, with too many big dreams, and they're willing to work for too little money. There are several areas like that. One is animation. One is, manga and anime. One is set design. Is another one. Like, oh man, I like to building sets. I like to, like for theater. Do not go into theater set design. Why? Because there are people. You can use a ruler. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can use a ruler. It's just extremely slow. Good luck with that. You may use a ruler, though it's legal. There are people who enjoy set design so much that they have all competed one another out of a fair working wage. In other words, set designers. Yeah, no, I do define art. I know what you mean. My art professors would be, if they knew I was attempting to define art, they would turn over in their graves. All right, do you know that expression? But I disagree with them. Okay, so art is stuff that's made to look at. Let me go back to that for a minute. Art is stuff that's made to look at. Now, a lot of people, let me slam a few doors shut, because somebody will say, oh, so traffic lights and furniture is made to look at. Is furniture art? Pornography is made to look at. Is pornography art? Traffic lights are made to look at. Is fire engines are made to look at? No. Okay, wait. No, let me go back to my definition and expand it just a little bit. Art is stuff that's made to look at, comma. Yeah, right, exactly. He was that guy, Duchamp, was making a socio-political statement with his urinal, or unless you're in England, urinal. He was making a socio-political statement. He wasn't creating art. He was talking about art, but he wasn't making art. Okay, so art is stuff that's made to look at with no auxiliary purpose. Do you know that big word? In other words, art is stuff that's made to look at with no in order to connected to it. Okay, so traffic lights are not necessarily art because that's stuff that's made to look at to keep us from killing each other on the road. Okay, pornography is stuff that's made to look at with the auxiliary purpose of exciting, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, erotic responses. Okay, so no, none of those things qualify. Art is stuff that's made to look at just to look at. Now, some Immanuel Kant and others say for aesthetic contemplation. But I'm willing to give up the aesthetic contemplation and say, nope, just if it's made purely to look at, then it's art. Now, whoops. Hang on. There we go, lost you for a second. Where was I? Art is stuff that's made to look at. Yes, exactly, Michael. All of the things you're talking about. All right, okay, so I was going to talk about modern art. Quote unquote, what most people call modern art. And I'm using the common vernacular. I'm not talking like an art expert or like a professor or a philosopher right now. I'm just using the terminology the way ordinary people use it. Ooh, I love that statement. Art exists because life is not enough. I love it. Actually, I love that statement. Yeah. I mean, it's philosophical, it's kind of poetic, you know, it's short and so forth. Anyway, so modern art is not art. Most of it is not art. Why? Because modern artists were not making stuff to look at. Picasso, for a large part, now it's hard to tell sometimes, but a lot of what he made, and the artists, you know, the whole list, Kandinsky, they were making stuff to think about. Do you hear the difference? And how perfectly modern, because what is, now I'm talking like a philosopher. What is modern man? Modern man is humanity reduced to a brain on a stick. That's what modern man is. Modern man is a thinking being. Everything else is very much secondary there. Absolutely, Michael. I think most contemporary art is boring, vacuous, unintelligent. It's a bunch of blind sheep, blind leading the blind, because if you're not good, as I am good, at skill, then one of the doors still left open to you is perhaps you can strike it rich and make a lot of money doing stupid stuff that does not require a lot of tedium. Where I started out today. Okay, so modern art is not stuff that's made to look at. I'm speaking very broadly here because some of it is made to look at. But a lot of it is not made to look at, it's made to think about. So according to my definition, stuff that is made to make you think, in my world, is not art. It is what we call modern art, but it's not real art. It's stuff to make you think. Okay, so boy. Whew. So my artist statement is, I create, and beauty certainly is the word, because life's not enough. I love it. Yeah, that's a good statement. Because life is not enough. So some of us get to create beauty in order to enrich the lives of others. Now, modern artists, perhaps you could say they were trying to enrich people's lives. Exactly. So esthetist, that's where we're getting into, that's where it gets, not all modern art is bad. Esthetist makes a very good point. Kandinsky, I probably shouldn't have said him. I should have said, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Malevich, Black on Black, okay? Because a lot of Kandinsky's stuff is in fact beautiful. But so it's not simple. Some modern art is in fact made to look at. Some of Picasso's stuff is made to look at. It's the hyper political, preachy, propagandistic stuff that most of us have seen, like Duchamp's urinal. It's not made to look at. He did it to make us think. And again, you understand, please understand that I disagree with the prevailing philosophy of the modern art world. Now, I am absolutely convinced that I'm correct. And either in my lifetime or after my lifetime, I will live to see the whole modern art milieu collapse like a house of cards, because it is predicated upon faulty view of mankind. Mankind is not a thinking machine, period. We do think. Thinking is one of the things we do, but it does not define or circumscribe our entire being. Thinking is one of the things we do. We do a whole lot of other things besides think. We feel, we intuit, we create. There's all kinds of soulish, ooey-gooey words that are not contained in the word thinking. In other words, we are rational beings. That's exactly right, Roger Scruton. Almost, I would say, a hero of mine. You're exactly right. Thomas Wolfe wrote an article years ago, a small booklet called The Painted Word, where he attacks the very thing I'm talking about. He says, art has become nothing more than words. He was talking again about the modern art movement, and I think there's a lot of people that have written very good things. Roger Scruton is a very favorite, one of my favorite thinkers. I didn't get my positions, my thoughts from him, but I found in him a very capable ally in my rantings against the inadequacies of what most of us call modern art. Modern art was birthed in the modern era because of a misunderstanding of the essence of man. Modern people, now I'm talking like a philosopher, modern people, starting with René Descartes, that's where modernity is, for a philosopher, that's where it started. I think, therefore I am. Cogito ergo sum. It reduced man to essentially a rationalistic and only a rational being. One of my friends in conversation on this subject several years ago said, it turns out that our mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And that's a brilliant summary statement. I love my mind. I love your mind. I love the fact that we can think. Having a mind is a very good thing. A mind is a fantastic servant of myself and of mankind. But the mind is a terrible tyrant. When your intellect becomes the master, the predominating feature of your life, you are a miserable person. Put it down. Count on it. And many people, young people in particular, most people grow out of this with age and maturity, and life beats the crap out of them. But many young people are doing their darndest to try to become, and I'm going to use a slightly bad word here, forgive me, but you've been warned, are trying to become smart asses. Just as smart assy as they can be, because it feels good to them. But it's a short-lived pleasure, and it does not bring about long-term quality of life. So, and the essence of the modern art movement, you could say, was a smart-ass movement. It was not about creating beauty. Beauty, by the way, has a way of humbling you. In fact, the attempt to create beauty is in itself a humbling act. Let me go back to where I started this afternoon. Tedium. Again, how long has it taken me? I've been drawing on this crazy one drawing for an hour because it's taken me that long to make that many lines to create this shading. And I'm making no pretense about this being like some grand, beautiful thing of art. No. It's just a little thing of art. I do believe it is interesting to look at. Okay, I got one thought stumbling on top of the next. So let me try to finish one before I start the next one. Creating a thing of beauty is in itself a humbling, I would even use the stronger word, a humiliating act. Trying to create the word. I don't mean this in a like it destroys you. But trying to create beauty is in and of itself a humiliating activity, because you realize how far short you fall of your goal. Thank you. Somebody online today is a very astute. I agree with you completely. He was drawing the correlation between modern art and World War I. Correct. And if I may expand that, you're exactly correct. Not only World War I, but World War I, the Depression, and World War II. All three events did much to expression of the darkness of that era. And I do not hold, even though you can hear that I disagree with much in the modern art era. I do not hold those modern artists, like I mentioned Malevich, another Russian, right? I believe. I do not hold Malevich in contempt. No, if I had been him in his station of life, experiencing what he experienced, I think I would have done the same thing that Malevich did. I'm just glad I don't live in the same era that he lived in. I got to make one more statement about the definition of art. Art is stuff that's made to look at. Good art, and again, my professors would be turning over in their graves if they could hear me say this. Art is stuff that's made to look at. Good art is stuff that's made to look at that people like looking at. Which is, as you can tell, is what is that, a syllogism? Or a tautologism? A tautology? I know. I'm playing word games when I make this statement that art is stuff that's made to look at. Good art is stuff that's made to look at that people enjoy looking at. So, as you can tell, that's not a serious statement. It's tongue in cheek, so to speak. Whew! Well, this has been a fascinating afternoon with you guys. But I am going to quit here shortly. And I can tell my internet is not doing very well. So this is a good place for me to stop. It's been delightful.